The workshop was quiet except for the soft hum of tools and the faint crackle of solder. Ethan Reed leaned closer to the visor he'd been working on for weeks. His hands were steady, his eyes focused, his mind racing with hope and fear. The visor was not just a piece of technology, it was a gamble. If it worked, it could change a life. If it failed, it could crush a fragile dream. Across the room sat Lyra, the alien girl. She was small, no taller than his shoulder, her skin a pale silver with faint blue lines that glowed like rivers under the surface. Her eyes, however, were clouded white. She had been blind since birth. Her species had advanced senses of hearing and touch, but she had never known sight. Ethan had met her by chance. He was a mechanic, an engineer, and a dreamer. She was lost, separated from her people, and in need of help. At first, she had been afraid of him, but over time, she trusted him. And in her trust, he saw an opportunity, not for profit, but for something greater, to give her what she had never had. He picked up the visor. It looked simple, black glass lenses, thin metal frame, light enough to sit comfortably on her face. But inside, it was anything but simple. A mix of human engineering and alien biotech, carefully pieced together with trial and error. It was designed to tap into the strange signals in her brain, to translate the world into colors and shapes she could understand. "Lyra," Ethan said softly. "It's ready." She tilted her head, her long ears twitching slightly at his voice. Her hands rested nervously on her lap. "You think it will work this time?" He smiled, though his stomach tightened. "I don't think." "I know." He walked over, careful and gentle. He placed the visor over her face, adjusting the strap behind her head. The device powered on with a soft hum, the lenses glowing faintly. Ethan held his breath. At first there was silence. Then Lyra gasped. Her hands shot up to her face, not to pull the visor away, but to hold it closer. Her clouded eyes widened, and a faint shimmer of light appeared within them. I see something," she whispered. Her voice shook. "Shapes, colors, you, Ethan. I see you." Ethan laughed, a sound mixed with joy and disbelief. "It works." "It actually works." Tears ran down her cheeks, glowing faintly in the dim light. She stood shakily, reaching out. Her fingers did not grope in the dark this time, they aimed directly at his face. She touched his cheek, her cloudy eyes fixed on him with wonder. "You gave me sight," she whispered. "You gave me the stars." For a moment, the small workshop felt like the center of the universe. Ethan had done it. He had given sight to a girl who had never known light. The moment was pure, perfect, unforgettable. But beyond the walls of his workshop, something else was happening. Far away, in orbit above the planet, a signal had been detected. The visor was not just a miracle for Lyra. It was a disruption, a spike of energy not meant to exist. Alien systems registered the surge, and a warning was sent. 4 figures received it. 4 soldiers, elite and ruthless, sworn to protect secrets that humans like Ethan were never meant to uncover. 2 nights later, Ethan woke to the sound of engines cutting through the sky. His heart pounded as he looked out the window. Dark shapes descended from the clouds, sleek ships that made no sound except for the rush of displaced air. He turned to Lyra, who had been sleeping peacefully, her visor still resting on her nightstand. She opened her eyes, still glowing faintly with the gift he had given her. "What is it?" she asked, sensing his fear. Ethan swallowed hard. "We need to leave now." Outside, the ships landed. 4 soldiers stepped out, tall, armored, faceless behind black visors. Their movements were sharp, precise, like predators on the hunt. They walked in perfect formation toward the small house. Ethan grabbed the visor, pressed it into Lyra's hands, and whispered, "No matter what happens, don't let them take this from you." The door rattled. The night air grew heavy. And then, with a deafening crash, the soldiers broke through. The story had only just begun. The door burst inward, metal hinges tearing apart with a scream of force. Ethan stumbled back, shielding Lyra behind him. Dust filled the air. The soldiers entered in silence, their armor gleaming black with faint red lines running across it like veins of fire. Each carried a weapon shaped for precision, humming faintly with deadly energy. They did not speak. They did not hesitate. Their visors scanned the room, analyzing every detail. Ethan could feel the weight of their attention settle on him, heavy and suffocating. Lyra clutched his arm. She was trembling, but her eyes, her new eyes, were wide and bright, locked on the intruders. For the first time, she could see danger, not just sense it, and it terrified her. One of the soldiers stepped forward. He raised a hand and his voice came through a translator, flat and cold. Human. You have built a device forbidden by law. You will come with us. Ethan's jaw tightened. She was blind, he said, his voice shaking with anger. I gave her sight. That's not a crime, it's a gift. The soldier's head tilted slightly. It is a crime against order. You will come now. Ethan's mind raced. He was just one man, a mechanic with no weapons, no training. These were elite soldiers, bred and trained for war. Fighting them would be suicide. But surrender? That would mean losing everything. It would mean Lyra losing her sight, her freedom, and maybe her life. He forced himself to stand tall, even as fear clawed at him. If you want me, you'll have to go through me first. The soldier did not respond with words. Instead, he raised his weapon. Ethan's heart stopped. But before the soldier could fire, Lyra stepped forward. Her hands glowed faintly, blue light pulsing from the veins under her skin. Ethan had seen it before, but never like this. She shouted, a sound that carried both fear and power, and a wave of force rippled through the room. The soldiers staggered. Their formation broke for the first time. Run, Ethan shouted. They darted through the back of the workshop, Ethan pulling Lyra with him. The night air was cold, sharp against his lungs. Behind them, the soldiers recovered quickly. The sound of boots striking the ground echoed like thunder. Ethan knew he couldn't outrun them forever. He dragged Lyra toward the forest that bordered his home. The trees were thick, shadows swallowing them as they plunged into the darkness. Branches snapped under their feet. The hum of weapons charged behind them. A blast tore through the air, striking a tree just to their right. Bark exploded in a shower of sparks. Keep going, Ethan shouted, though his legs were already burning, his chest aching. Lyra kept pace, her visor glowing faintly. For the first time, she could see the world rushing past her. The blur of trees, the glow of moonlight, the fire of explosions. Fear and wonder mixed in her chest. Another blast seared the ground ahead, cutting them off. Ethan skidded to a stop, pulling Lyra close. The soldiers closed in, their black armor gleaming even in the shadows. They moved with precision like hunters tightening the circle. Ethan's mind screamed at him to fight, but how? He had nothing but his hands, his wits, and the girl beside him. Then Lyra whispered, I can stop them. Ethan looked at her in shock. What are you talking about? Her glowing veins pulsed brighter. I can feel them. Their energy. I can push it back, but it will hurt. Ethan's heart twisted. She was just a child discovering sight for the first time, and now she was ready to sacrifice herself for him. No, he said firmly, not unless we have no choice. The soldiers raised their weapons again. It was choice or death. Lyra lifted her hands. The air vibrated with energy, a low hum that grew louder and louder. The soldiers hesitated, adjusting their stance. A blast of blue light erupted from Lyra's palms. It slammed into the soldiers like a storm, knocking them back into the trees. Armor cracked, weapons clattered to the ground. For the first time, the soldiers looked less like machines and more like men, vulnerable, struggling to rise. Lyra collapsed to her knees, panting, her glow fading. Ethan caught her before she fell. You saved us, he whispered, holding her tightly. But deep inside, dread coiled in his chest. If 4 soldiers had been sent, there would be more. If they knew about Lyra's power, about the visor, then their fight was only beginning. He looked down at her pale face, her faint smile even in exhaustion. She had seen him. She had seen the world. He would not let anyone take that away. Ethan stood, carrying her in his arms. The night stretched endless ahead of them. Somewhere out there, safety might exist, or more danger than he could imagine. But one thing was certain. Humanity's fight had just begun. The forest stretched on endlessly, but Ethan knew the soldiers would not give up. Elite soldiers never failed their missions. They would track him and Lyra until the end of the world if necessary. He moved quickly through the trees, his breath ragged, his arms heavy from carrying her. The ground was uneven, roots catching his boots, branches scraping his face. But he did not stop. Lyra stirred weakly in his arms. Her visor still glowed faintly, but her face was pale. The blast she had unleashed had taken too much from her. She opened her cloudy eyes, the light within them dim but steady. Are they gone? She whispered. Ethan shook his head. Not for long. They'll regroup. Soldiers like that, they don't quit. Her hand gripped his shirt weakly. Then why run? You should leave me. They want you, not me. Ethan stopped, his heart tightening. He looked down at her. at the faint glow in her skin, at the tears she tried to hide. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I didn't give you sight just to let them take it away. I won't leave you ever." Her lips trembled. She lowered her head against his chest, silent. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, not just through her eyes, but through his promise. Ethan kept moving. Hours passed, the forest giving way to rocky hills. The moon dipped lower, shadows growing heavier. Finally, he spotted the mouth of a cave hidden by hanging vines. He slipped inside, setting Lyra down gently against the wall. The cave was cool and damp. Drops of water echoed faintly, and the air smelled of earth. It wasn't safe, but it was shelter. Ethan crouched by her side. "Rest, I'll keep watch." But rest did not come easily. Lyra's breathing was uneven, her body drained. Ethan felt helpless. He was just an engineer, not a fighter, not a doctor. He could build machines, fix engines, but how could he fight trained soldiers with nothing but his hands? His thoughts were interrupted by a faint hum. He froze, listening. The sound grew louder, low, mechanical, searching, drones. His pulse quickened. He moved quickly to the cave entrance, peeking out from behind the vines. Small black machines floated through the trees, red lights scanning the ground. The soldiers had released trackers. Ethan ducked back inside. They had only minutes before the drones found them. He turned to Lyra. She was awake now, watching him with worried eyes. "They're coming, aren't they?" She asked softly. "Yes," he admitted, "but I have an idea." He pulled his bag closer, digging through the tools and scraps he always carried. A small power cell, a coil of wire, a cracked lens. To most it was junk. To Ethan it was possibility. He worked quickly, his hands steady despite the fear pounding in his chest. He built a small device, crude but functional, a signal scrambler. If it worked, it could confuse the drones long enough to give them time. If it failed, they'd be cornered. Lyra watched him, her eyes glowing faintly. "You build things the way I feel things," she whispered. "Fast, certain." Ethan glanced at her, surprised. "And you save us the way I could never dream of." For a moment, fear faded, replaced by a fragile bond of trust. The hum grew louder. Red light flashed across the cave wall. The drones were here. Ethan activated the device. It buzzed, sparks dancing across the wires. The red lights outside flickered, then dimmed. The hum grew unstable. One by one, the drones dropped from the air, crashing into the ground like broken toys. It worked. But before relief could take root, heavy footsteps echoed through the trees. The soldiers were coming themselves this time. Ethan cursed under his breath. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move." They slipped out the back of the cave, climbing a narrow passage that led upward. Rocks crumbled under their feet, the climb steep and dangerous. Behind them, the cave filled with light as the soldiers arrived. "Ethan Reed!" one of them shouted, his voice amplified by his suit. "There is no escape. Surrender, and your death will be swift." Ethan pulled Lyra higher, his muscles burning. The soldier's words cut through the night, sharp and merciless. But surrender was not an option. At the top of the ridge, they collapsed, gasping for air. The valley stretched before them, dark fields, distant lights of a settlement, and beyond that, the glow of something larger. A city. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The city was dangerous, but it was also crowded. Soldiers couldn't hunt openly there, not without drawing attention. If they could reach it, they might buy time. He looked at Lyra, who was pale but determined. "We're going to the city," he said. "We'll find allies. We'll find a way." Far below, the soldiers climbed out of the cave, their visors glowing red in the dark. They had seen Ethan's path. They would not stop. The hunt had only begun. The city loomed like a sleeping giant. Towers of steel and glass pierced the sky, their windows glowing with cold light. The streets were alive with sound. Hover cars humming, vendors shouting, neon signs flashing in a dozen colors. Ethan and Lyra stood at the edge, dirty, exhausted, and out of place. To anyone watching, they looked like a desperate mechanic and a sickly alien girl. But to the soldiers hunting them, they were much more. A crime to be erased. Ethan pulled Lyra's hood low over her glowing skin. "Stay close. Don't let anyone see your visor." She nodded, her voice quiet but steady. "I will follow you." They entered the crowd. The press of bodies, the endless noise, the flashing lights, it was overwhelming. Lyra clung to Ethan's arm, her new eyes wide. She had never seen a city before. The colors, the movement, the chaos. It was too much and too beautiful all at once. "Don't stare," Ethan whispered. though he knew it was useless. Everything was new to her. They slipped through narrow streets, searching for safety. Ethan knew he couldn't keep running forever. He needed help. But help in the city came at a price. They found a small workshop tucked between tall buildings. The sign above the door flickered weakly. Mechanical repairs, no questions asked. Ethan pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled of oil and rust. Shelves were stacked with scrap parts, tools, and machines in various states of repair. Behind the counter stood a broad-shouldered man with grease on his hands and suspicion in his eyes. "Ethan Reed," the man said, his voice rough. "Didn't think I'd see you here." Ethan stiffened. "Hello, Marcus," the man smirked. "Hello, Trouble." Marcus had once been Ethan's partner years ago. They had built machines together, dreamed of inventions. But Marcus had chosen money and power, while Ethan had chosen principles. They hadn't spoken since. "I need a place to stay," Ethan said. "Just for a night." Marcus leaned on the counter, eyeing Lyra. "And who's the girl?" "She's with me," Ethan said quickly. "That's all you need to know," Marcus chuckled. "You always did take in strays." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Please, Marcus, just help me this once." Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "Fine, I've got a back room. But whatever you're running from, don't bring it to my door." Ethan nodded gratefully. He guided Lyra into the small room behind the shop. It was cramped, filled with old parts and broken machines, but it was shelter. Lyra sank onto a chair, exhausted. "Rest," Ethan told her softly. "You're safe here. For now." But safe was a fragile word. Across the city, the soldiers had arrived. They moved in silence, their black armor hidden beneath long cloaks. Their visors scanned faces, their weapons concealed but ready. They were hunters in a forest of prey, and Ethan was their target. Back in the workshop, Marcus watched Ethan and Lyra from the shadows. His mind was turning. He knew the kind of people who would hunt Ethan, dangerous people, powerful people. And Marcus had always loved power. That night, as Ethan dozed in the corner, Lyra sat quietly, her visor resting in her lap. She traced the edges of it with her fingers, remembering the first moment she saw light. Tears welled in her eyes. Ethan stirred, noticing. "What's wrong?" She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly. "Why did you do this for me? You risked everything." Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady but gentle. "Because sight isn't just about seeing the world. It's about hope. And you deserve hope." Her lips trembled into a small smile. For the first time, she felt not just like a lost alien, but like someone who mattered. But outside, the soldiers closed in. And Marcus, in the other room, picked up his communicator. His voice was low and careful. "I have information," he whispered, "about a man named Ethan Reed and a girl with him." The soldiers listened. The trap was set. The city never slept. Even in the darkest hours, neon lights flickered across damp streets, and the hum of traffic never ceased. But inside Marcus's workshop, the night was heavy and silent. Ethan and Lyra rested in the cramped back room, unaware that danger was already at their door. Marcus stood in the front, his communicator still warm in his hand. His eyes lingered on the dark glass of the device, then drifted toward the back room where Ethan and the alien girl slept. Old memories tugged at him. He remembered long nights with Ethan, working side by side, building machines that could change lives. Ethan had always been the dreamer, the one who cared more about helping others than about profit. Marcus had chosen a different path: survival, money, power. Now he told himself this wasn't betrayal, it was business. Turning in Ethan would earn him protection, maybe even wealth. And in the city, wealth was safety. He turned the lock on the front door, waiting. The soldiers came quietly. 4 shadows moved through the street, their cloaks blending with the dark. They slipped inside the shop, their steps precise and silent. Marcus gestured toward the back room. "He's there," he whispered. "With the girl." The lead soldier's visor glowed red. He didn't thank Marcus. He didn't even look at him. The soldiers moved in formation toward the back. Marcus exhaled, a knot of guilt twisting in his chest. But it was too late to turn back. Inside the small room, Ethan stirred. Something wasn't right. The air felt too still, too sharp. He sat up quickly, his instincts screaming. "Lyra," he whispered urgently, shaking her shoulder. "Wake up." She blinked, confused. "What?" The sound of armored boots cut her question short. Ethan's eyes darted to the door. He had seconds, maybe less. He grabbed his bag, yanked open the small window at the back, and shoved it upward. Go, he hissed. Lyra hesitated. Fear froze her for a moment, but then she saw the fire in his eyes. She climbed through the narrow window. Her visor clutched tightly in her hands. The door burst open. The soldiers filled the room, their weapons raised, glowing with lethal energy. Ethan dove for the window. A blast seared past his shoulder, burning the wall where his head had been. He rolled out into the alley, landing hard on the wet pavement. Run, he shouted, pulling Lyra with him. The alley exploded with noise. Beams of light tore through the darkness, scorching brick and metal. Ethan dragged Lyra forward, weaving through trash bins and broken pipes. Behind them, the soldiers followed without hesitation. Their movements were sharp, relentless. They were not men chasing prey, they were machines executing a mission. Ethan's lungs burned. His legs ached. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. They darted into the crowded streets. Neon lights reflected in puddles. Faces blurred together in the chaos. People shouted as the chase spilled into the open. The soldiers adjusted instantly, their cloaks falling away to reveal black armor. The crowd screamed and scattered. Hovercars swerved to avoid the blasts tearing through the street. Ethan pulled Lyra into a narrow side road, his mind racing. They couldn't outrun soldiers forever. They needed a plan. Ethan, Lyra gasped, her hand glowing faintly as she stumbled beside him. I can stop them again. Like before. He shook his head sharply. No, it nearly killed you last time. Her voice was desperate. If I don't, they'll take you. They'll take everything. He looked at her, at the fire in her glowing eyes. Despite her exhaustion, she was willing to fight for him, for what he had given her. It broke his heart and steeled his resolve. Not yet, he said. Save your strength. We'll need it. They burst into another alley, ducking behind a row of crates. Ethan pressed his back against the wall, breathing hard. The soldiers' footsteps echoed closer, their visors sweeping the dark. Ethan's eyes darted around, searching for anything that could buy them time. His gaze landed on a stack of fuel canisters. Dangerous, unstable, perfect. He pulled a small tool from his bag, twisted the valve on one canister, and shoved it toward the alley entrance. Seconds later, the soldiers stepped into the alley. Ethan struck a spark. The explosion roared like thunder. Fire rolled through the alley, light swallowing everything. The shockwave knocked Ethan and Lyra back, heat searing their skin. The soldiers were thrown off their feet, their armor cracking against the walls. Ethan pulled Lyra up, coughing through the smoke. Go now. They ran again, their path lit by burning debris. Behind them, the soldiers rose from the flames, their armor scorched but their pursuit unbroken. From the shadows of the street, Marcus watched. He had not expected Ethan to escape. He had not expected fire in the streets. And as he watched the soldiers rise, unshaken, he felt something gnaw at his gut. Maybe this wasn't business after all. Maybe this was war. The fire in the alley raged, smoke curling into the night sky. Sirens wailed as emergency drones zipped overhead, flashing red lights. The city was waking to chaos. But Ethan and Lyra had no time to watch. They ran through twisting streets, their lungs burning, their hearts pounding. Behind them, the soldiers pushed forward through the smoke. Their armor was scorched, their movement slower, but their pursuit was unbroken. Ethan dragged Lyra into an abandoned subway entrance, rusted gates hanging open. They stumbled down the stairs into the dark tunnels below. The stench of dust and damp concrete filled the air. Their footsteps echoed hollowly as they descended deeper. Finally, Ethan slowed, leaning against the wall to catch his breath. Lyra collapsed beside him, clutching her visor tightly. Ethan, she whispered, her voice weak. I can't keep running. He crouched beside her, brushing damp hair from her face. Her skin glowed faintly blue, her veins shimmering like fading stars. She was exhausted, and he hated himself for dragging her through this. I know, he said softly, but just a little longer. We'll find safety. I promise, from the shadows a voice answered. Promises are dangerous things. Ethan's head snapped up. Figures emerged from the darkness, 3 men and 2 women, ragged but armed. Their clothes were patched together from scavenged armor and fabric. Their weapons clearly modified from old tech. Rebels donned the leader. A tall woman with scars across her cheek studied Ethan and Lyra carefully. You've made quite a mess up there. Fire in the streets, soldiers hunting you. Care to explain why? Ethan tensed, ready to fight if needed. We didn't start this. They're after us. The woman's eyes narrowed. Why? Ethan hesitated. Lyra's small hand gripped his tightly, her cloudy eyes glowing faintly under the visor's edge. He couldn't tell them everything, but he also couldn't lie. "Because I built something," Ethan said finally. "Something they don't want to exist." The woman tilted her head. "The visor." Ethan's stomach dropped. "How do you know?" One of the rebels stepped forward, holding up a cracked datapad. "Because the soldiers aren't the only ones listening to the city's signals. We picked up the same spike they did." He pointed at Lyra. "She's the reason, isn't she?" Lyra shrank against Ethan's side, fear flickering in her glowing eyes. Ethan's voice hardened. "She's a child. She was blind. All I did was give her sight." The rebels exchanged looks. The woman finally nodded. "Then you're not enemies of ours. You're enemies of theirs." She extended her hand. "Come with us." "If you want to live, you'll need more than running. You'll need allies." Ethan hesitated only a moment before gripping her hand. He had no other choice. They followed the rebels deeper into the tunnels through winding passages lit by flickering lamps. Eventually, they reached a hidden chamber, an old maintenance hub transformed into a base. Maps covered the walls, crates of weapons stacked in corners, tired faces watching with suspicion and curiosity. Lyra sat quietly as Ethan explained what had happened: her blindness, the visor, the soldiers. The rebels listened carefully. When he finished, the scarred woman leaned forward. "Do you understand what you've done, Ethan Reed? That visor isn't just a tool, it's proof. Proof that humans and aliens can combine knowledge, that limits can be broken. The soldiers aren't here just to silence you. They're here to erase the idea of you." Ethan's chest tightened. He had built it for one girl, for Lyra. But now he realized it was bigger than that. The woman continued. "We've fought them for years. Always in the shadows, always losing ground. But with that visor and with her, maybe we finally have something they can't control." Lyra lifted her head slowly, her glowing eyes meeting the woman's. "They fear me," she whispered. The woman nodded. "Yes, they fear what you represent." Before Ethan could respond, an alarm blared. The chamber shook with a deep rumble. The rebels scrambled to their positions, weapons ready. The soldiers had found them. Explosions tore through the tunnels, walls cracking, dust raining down. The entrance collapsed in fire, sealing off escape. The soldiers marched through the smoke, their black armor shining in the dim light. Ethan pulled Lyra behind cover, his heart hammering. The rebels fought fiercely, their weapons sparking against the soldiers' shields. But the enemy was relentless, their precision overwhelming. Lyra clutched Ethan's hand. Her glow brightened, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Ethan," she whispered, "if I don't use it now, we all die." His eyes widened. "No, you'll burn yourself out." Her grip tightened. "Then promise me something. Promise you'll keep fighting." "Even if I can't." Tears burned his eyes. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to protect her, to keep her safe. But the truth pressed down on him. She was not just a child anymore. She was something more. "I promise," he whispered. She closed her eyes. Light erupted. Blue waves of energy blasted through the chamber, sweeping across the soldiers. Their armor cracked, their weapons shattered, their formation crumbled. The ground trembled with the force. When the light faded, silence followed. The soldiers lay broken. The rebels stared in awe, and Lyra collapsed in Ethan's arms unconscious, her glow fading to nothing. Ethan held her close, his heart shattering. She had saved them all, but at what cost? The chamber was silent, except for the crackle of small fires and the faint groans of injured rebels. Dust still hung in the air, glowing faintly where the last traces of Lyra's power shimmered and died. Ethan cradled her limp body, his hands trembling. Her skin was pale, her glow gone, her breath shallow. He pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay with me, Lyra, please." "Stay." Around him, the rebels began to stir, shaken but alive. The scarred woman, their leader, knelt beside Ethan. Her sharp eyes softened. "She saved us all," she whispered. "But the fight isn't finished." Ethan lifted his head, grief sharpening into fury. The soldiers who had survived were retreating, dragging their wounded back through the smoking tunnels. But more would come. Armies would come, they won't stop. Ethan said hoarsely. "Not until they've erased her. Erased what she represents." The woman nodded grimly. "Then we don't give them the chance." Ethan laid Lyra gently on a cot, brushing her hair back. She looked so small, so fragile. But he remembered the light, the way she had stood unafraid as her power consumed the soldiers. She was more than fragile. She was hope. He stood, fists clenched. We fight, not just to survive, but to show them. To show the galaxy that we won't kneel, won't be silent, won't let them decide who has the right to live and see. The rebels, bloodied and weary, raised their weapons. One voice shouted, "For Lyra." Another echoed, "For freedom." The chamber thundered with their cries. Hours later, the tunnel shook again. This time, it wasn't just soldiers. It was the full might of the elite force. Black armored squads, armored drones, and heavy machines marched into the underground, ready to crush the rebels for good. Ethan stood at the front line, visor schematics loaded into his datapad, jury-rigged weapons strapped to his arms. He was no soldier, but he had something the enemy never understood: a human's refusal to give up. The rebels opened fire. Explosions roared, gunfire rattled, smoke filled the tunnels. Ethan fought like a man possessed, ducking behind cover, blasting drones apart, striking soldiers with makeshift charges. Every second was bought with blood. Then from the cot where she had lain unmoving, Lyra stirred. Her eyes opened, faintly glowing once more. She was weak, barely able to move, but she could see. Through Ethan's visor, through the gift he had given her, she saw everything. The rebels, the soldiers, the desperate fight. She pushed herself up, pain racking her body. "Ethan?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but he heard it even through the chaos. He turned, hope flaring. "Lyra!" She reached toward him, her hand trembling. "You gave me sight. Now I'll give them vision." Before he could stop her, she pressed her palm against the visor's side. It flared to life, brighter than ever. But this time the light did not destroy. It revealed. Beams of blue spread across the battlefield, cutting through smoke and darkness. The soldiers staggered, their armor flickering, their helmets showing cracks not of metal but of illusion. And then Ethan saw the truth. The elite soldiers were not all what they seemed. Some were not aliens, some were humans, press-ganged, brainwashed, hidden beneath armor to serve as tools of the regime. Gasps spread through the rebels. Even the soldiers faltered as their identities flickered in the blue light. Faces were revealed, faces of men and women who had been told they were nothing but weapons. The rebels shouted to them, "You don't have to fight. You are one of us." And for the first time, the soldiers hesitated. Some lowered their weapons. A ripple of defiance spread through their ranks. The commanders roared, trying to force obedience. But cracks had formed, and no amount of shouting could hide the truth. Ethan stood tall, his voice carrying through the chamber. "You see it now. You're not their slaves. You're not their weapons. You're free if you choose to be." Lyra's light grew stronger, burning through the lies. One by one, the soldiers began to turn. First one dropped his rifle, then another. Soon, half the enemy force stood frozen, refusing to fight. The tide shifted. The rebels surged forward, driving back the commanders who still resisted. The tunnels echoed with the sound of rebellion, not just against an army, but against the chains of fear itself. Ethan rushed back to Lyra as the last shots rang out. She collapsed into his arms again, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Did it work?" she whispered. Ethan held her close, tears cutting through the grime on his face. "Yes, Lyra, you showed them. You gave them sight." Around them, the rebels cheered. The battle was won, not just with weapons, but with truth. The story of the blind alien girl who was given sight, and the human who defied an empire for her, would spread, and no army could erase that. Ethan looked down at Lyra, at the fragile but fierce girl who had changed everything. "Rest now," he whispered. "The fight isn't over, but because of you, it has begun." And in the tunnels, as the smoke cleared and hope bloomed, humanity proved once again why it could never be broken.